Before we get started with today's video, I wanted to add something onto the last two parts, mainly with the GTA 3 episode. So in addition to that whole highway shooting spree thing, which again was a terrible accident, it's not out of malice, just read the story that I linked in that video, I'll link it again. GTA 3 was connected to a series of, well, non-accidental crimes. All this took place in Oakland and was perpetrated by a gaggle of criminals who called themselves the Nutcases, going as far as to display tattoos of the Mr. Peanut himself. Rest in peace. I neglected to mention it in that episode because, well, there was plenty of stuff in there already. It's not like I forgot about it, which I did. So let's dish out my thoughts on that. Yep, those sure sound like some real nutcases. Alright, got that out of the way. Now let's get going on one of the most violent games of all time. Man, Jesus fuck a horse!
Fuck you, Cash! Fuck you!
Oh, wait, it's just you. Yeah, I forgot to mention this character is back. I kind of teased them in the Judgment video, so here's their obligatory appearance. Yep, they got me out of jail, and now I'm here covering Rockstar games under my own free will. Yep, that's definitely what's happening. Okay, you can go now. Dick. But speaking of getting broken out of jail to do terrible things, at this point in time, Rockstar are raking in loads of cash with the immaculate successes of GTA 3 and Vice City. They have set the trends for open world action games for many years to come, and the bar for highly controversial content in video games and the stupid reactions to such from an ignorant, stubborn class act of goofs that have no idea what the hell they're doing. However, like I said, they would still need to continue making successful games in order to maintain this kind of status. So may as well make another GTA game, right? Well, not quite. Oh, they were making one, but that was going to take far more time than the previous two. No, there was something that a separate team within Rockstar North had been cooking up during 3 and Vice City's development. Something a bit more straightforward, something more focused, and something much, much darker. And in late 2003, they decided it was time for the world to confront it. In all its terror and all its glory. I don't know how to finish this properly. Manhunt. The game's Manhunt. It's Manhunt. This little game is about as far removed as one could get from something like GTA. Rather than an open-ended, happy-go-lucky, do-what-you-want, shoot-who-you-want action-adventure, Manhunt is a strictly linear, grindhouse-style horror stealth game where you play as a convicted death row inmate saved by some crazy film director called The Director, who then forces you to navigate through a decrepit city and kill a bunch of similarly heinous individuals through increasingly brutal methods. Certainly a change of pace, eh? And let's make another change of pace from the last two games. I have never played the original Manhunt. Never had a PS2 growing up, and my buddy didn't have it in his Steam library, which is how I played 3 and Vice City. That said, I have played the sequel, which we will get to, so I do have some frame of reference, and looking at footage, I can tell both are quite similar, so I think it's okay for me to assume that Manhunt is a fine stealth romp. Compared to other stealth romps though, Manhunt's style is far simpler and not quite as involving or interesting as something like, I don't know, Hitman. Though that's likely in service to the game's most distinguishing feature. Throughout the game, you'll be given several opportunities to sneak up on some unsuspecting gang boy, zero in on their poor defenseless body, and use one of the game's multiple weapons to delete their life.exe. Each execution has 3 levels of varying brutality. Let's use the plastic bag as an example since that's the least worst of all of them. The hasty method is quick and efficient, so you just slap the bag over the dude's head and smother them to death. The violent method isn't as fast, but ups said violence by adding in a punch and a few kicks to the face. And the gruesome method takes the longest, but goes the extra mile by snapping the bastard's neck. But that's just the start of it all. The stronger the weapons you use, the more violent the executions. And the more violent the executions, the more YouTube is likely to think this video will be for kids, and I get fined $1 grillion for setting it otherwise. I suppose you could just go and swing around your hammer or plowing these fucks away with your shotgun, but where's the fun in that? And also by the end of the level, you're graded on how many executions you perform, as well as how brutal they are, which leads to unlockables and such. Bottom line, yeah, this game is a little fucked up. Essentially the video game equivalent of all those grindhouse and exploitation films shot out all over the independent scene during the 70s and 80s. Although really it borrows concepts and themes from all over the place. Running Man, The Warriors, Deliverance, Watchmen, and of course those dang-ass slasher films them stupid kids shouldn't be watching, Martha. I told you it'd rot Johnny's brain, and now we've gone out and thwacked his own mother. I know it's probably not right to say this is your funeral, but someone had to say it. Regardless, it's an incredibly violent horror game that even its developers were uneasy about making. So much so, it almost caused a mutiny within the team. So who knows how a general audience would react to this interactive horror film that puts you in the role of a ruthless killer hell-bent on killing everyone with killable weapons, a killable spirit, and a killable variety of killable kills? I mean, yeah, some people didn't like it, I guess. Manhunt's extremely violent nature was always going to draw the ire of plenty of folks. But instead of merely complaining about the product like with the past two games, numerous entities took steps towards outright banning the product. New Zealand was the first to do so, and while they're not strangers to the practice, yet bringing Postal 2 there so I get arrested for 10 years and fined 50 grand is still on the bucket list, Manhunt has the distinction of being the first game to be banned in the country. Congrats? Germany soon followed, as did Saudi Arabia, and of course Australia refused to classify it as well. Although it took a year for them to pull the plug there, and until then they had let it pass with a meager MA15+ rating. Those Aussies never cease to amaze me. That's not a derogatory term, is it? I'm pretty sure it isn't, but it sounds like one. Also, despite the game being rated M by the ESRB, some fellows in Mapleland didn't think that was good enough to prevent it from destroying the minds of the underage. If anyone remembers Soldier of Fortune and the stroke I had with the British Columbia Film Classification Office trying to label that thing as a porno, no, I'm not kidding, that did happen. A similar incident occurred with Manhunt, but not by them. Instead, the Ontario Film Review Board decided to classify it as a film after meeting with the dude responsible for banning the title in New Zealand, though they stopped short of brandishing it as porn and merely gave it an R rating, which apparently meant if it was sold to minors, the buyers could be fined up to 25 grand and the distributors could be fined up to 100 grand. In an ironic twist though, the BCFCO reviewed the game for themselves and determined the M rating was sufficient enough for the title. I suppose that new government replaced whoever the hell made that soft decision with more tolerant and competent board members. Maybe the same thing will happen in Ontario, assuming it's still classified as a film there. Elsewhere in North America, namely the US, there were a few articles and media buzz that broke out about the game, as expected, and some politicians put out some hilarious statements about how it was telling kids how to kill someone while using vicious, sadistic, and cruel methods to kill. Okay, boomer. Overseas, the UK pretty much had a non-reaction to the product despite slapping it with the 18 rating, and for a while it seemed like this was as bad as things would get. Though as much as I'd like to end things here, it really is never that simple when it comes to Rockstar. Is it, Tommy boy? Yes, it never truly is that simple. Would you get out of here? February 2004, Leicester. Two teenagers meet in a park, one Warren LeBlanc, the other Stefan Pakira. The two are supposed to be good friends, but the former doesn't have the best of intentions with this meeting, as they bring out a knife and claw hammer and proceed to beat and stab the latter to death, confessing that much to the police moments after. He's arrested and brought to trial months later, where the grieving parents claim that the offender was completely obsessed with this newfangled video game called Manhunt, and that obsession led to this killing. This information was eaten up to pieces by the media, and even with Rockstar completely rejecting the idea that this game was responsible for influencing such a terrible murder, it didn't stop the nation's largest retailer, Dixon's, from removing the game from their stock with no plans to restock anytime soon, with some other stores following suit due to minors somehow getting a hold of it despite such limitations in place. A first for this type of case when it came to Rockstar, I suppose. But as you've all come to expect, assuming you've already watched the first two parts, I need to once again make things clear and tear apart the obvious flaws within this testimony. Going by court proceedings and official statements, the perpetrator didn't commit the crime purely for sport, as was so subtly implied in the media. Rather, they needed money to pay back a gang apparently threatening them over drug-related deaths. So he decided to rob his friend. LeBlanc also said he brought the weaponry in order to stun Pekira rather than outright kill him, but considering the victim had more than 50 separate injuries resulting from the attack, that clearly didn't go as planned. More importantly though, contrary to the victim's claims and the news fest that followed, Manhunt was not found in LeBlanc's possession. Pekira was the owner of that copy. It's probably not a stretch to assume they both played together, or even to assume LeBlanc had been lent the game, as the victim's family claims, but that didn't matter as the police stated there was absolutely no link between the murder and the game thanks to all this evidence. And in a completely unexpected turn of events, all this did in the end was increase demand for the game, resulting in a boost of sales for Rockstar and crew. Wow, this chick sure never gets old. Oh look, Florida man's back to put 100 nails labeled "fuck you" in the coffin. Yeah, Tommy Boy's role in all this is pretty much the same exact story as before. He was hired by the victims' families to sue Rockstar, Sony, and, I don't know, the company dog for this murder. The court was like, "Fuck off, you Yankee prick," and it was dropped soon after. The criminal trial ended with the accused found guilty, and they were given a sentence of 13 to life. Now, this is where you would think the story would end, but thanks to me taking so long to get started with this damn series, there have been some recent developments. Yes, it turns out they found a Manhunt shrine in the bedroom of Mr. LeBlanc where he would dance around it while praying to the Rockstar gods and dressing up like Pigsy as his nightly ritual. Pekira just happened to walk in on him one day and LeBlanc murdered him to keep people from finding out his secret. But now that I've revealed this to you all, let's laugh at his dumb fucking face. Okay, but seriously. A few months ago, LeBlanc was given his first parole hearing, and after much deliberation, the parole board decided he was fit to be released back into society. Unsurprisingly, the victim's family were not too happy with that decision, and vowed to prevent this from happening until LeBlanc made a formal apology to them, and they subsequently filed an appeal stating exactly that, which was denied, so it looks like LeBlanc will be out and about soon enough. As a contingency plan, though, the family filed a petition for what they dubbed Stefan's Law, which would force any convicted murderers to apologize to the families of their victims before being considered for parole, with the goal of 100,000 signatures in mind so that the government would have no choice but to discuss it. So far, they've got a long way to go before that happens, and, honestly, I'm not 100% sure how this would satiate other families, because apologies either usually ring hollow or are not nearly enough for those victims' families. I suppose that is better than nothing, though, and I don't want to look like a bigger dick than I normally am, so there we go. And that's about it for Manhunt. Got itself some outrage, some more bannings, and yet another failed lawsuit tied to yet another terrible crime. I guess it really wasn't that big overall, but it was at least less of a slog to go through than Vice City. These days, Manhunt is regarded by some as a classic horror game, almost on the level of the previous two GTA games, though it hasn't sold anywhere close to where those things have, and if anything, its place in history is more so for its boundary-breaking violence, which would only get amplified and shat on much harder by these same people with the sequel, but that's for another day, kids. Regardless, I'll give it 7 horrific disembowelments out of 10. Did you know this dude was voiced by Brian Cox, and is probably the best part of the whole game? I say with full confidence, despite not having played it, because I've been too busy playing Murder by Numbers, a visual novel in the vein of Ace Attorney, except instead of being the dopiest lawyer ever, you solve a bunch of high cross puzzles. It's a pretty good game, not gonna lie. And I also got Doom Eternal and those other games as well. I wrote the script like 4 weeks ago. Shut up. Now, if you're disappointed at how not that big this controversy turned out to be, don't forget that the next one is, without a doubt, the largest controversy Rockstar has ever faced, period. Forget any of the fits about torture scenes, drunk driving, Columbine simulators, or excessive crunch for the purpose of crafting the best horse balls of modern art. As I've said before, when senators get involved in this stuff, you know you landed into some hot shit. Yes, for the next episode, we'll be looking at— Fuck off! Ugh. Robot assistant, please get this thing out of here. Oh, that's probably not good. Oh yeah, something cough 19, something quarantine, something xenophobia, something wash your hands, stay inside, you filthy mugs.